Lesson 19. Surrender the dream of the dreamer. Beloved and holy children of light divine, it is our honor to come forth and abide with you, to communicate with you. We come forth to join with you because the sole purpose of creation is to extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. What greater good could there be than to create communication that can call forth from the Christ mind to every aspect of the sonship in such a way that the mind is stirred to seek ways to heal its illusion, and therefore return home to the recognition of what is never changed? What could be more holy than to use each moment of relationship in the recognition that only God's children can truly relate one to another, and that the purpose of their relationship is to heal illusion, that the holy might be extended? And what could be more beautiful than to join together, you and we, in this moment, to recognize that what is truly beautiful is the recognition that I and my Father are one? Therefore, the extension of the good, the holy, and the beautiful needs to become your sole purpose, as it has become ours. For only when the mind is used for this purpose alone can there be the perfect remembrance of the kingdom. You have sought us out because you desire the kingdom. As the weight of your illusions has become too painful, the games that you have sought to play within the dream of separation no longer satisfy, no longer seduce you, no longer gratify your imagination. Beneath all dreams you have heard the call of the one who sent you forth and asks you, "Little child, return. I am with you still. Let us create together the good, the holy, and the beautiful." The only difference that can yet seem to remain between us and you is that all of us involved in this work, from what you might perceive to be the other side, are merely beings, aspect of mind like yourself, that within the illusion of time, within the plane out of time, seem to have chosen before you to heal all illusion and return home. Therefore we call to you from across the very thin veil of illusion that yet seems to keep you where you are, seemingly separate from us. That illusion, by the way, is not the physical body, nor is it the physical dimension, since in reality the physical dimension does not exist. What exists is thought, streaming forth from mind, creating or outpicturing that which has been held within the mind. So the very physical body becomes only a symbol of what the mind has decided to believe, such as, "Surely I am separate from God. That is the outpicturing I want. So I will look upon a physical body, identify myself with it, and therefore seem to peer out from the body and see great distance between myself and others. And if there is a great distance between myself and other bodies or forms, then surely there is an unfathomable gulf between myself and God." When perception has been cleansed, when perception has been purified, the body itself becomes transparent to consciousness, to the witnessing awareness of mind. It sees no longer that which it has identified. It sees only the phenomena of mental energy temporarily being played out in the field of space and time. The body itself no longer becomes a barrier or obstacle to overcome. The body itself no longer is seen or perceived as something that can bring love to it, or can reach out and attract or draw to itself what has been perceived as valuable in the world. Rather, the body becomes one thing, a temporary opportunity to extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. In other words, even the body itself can have no purpose, save that which the Comforter, the Holy Spirit, the right-mindedness within you, would give to it. Therefore, if you want to experience the body as being at peace, if you want to experience the body as serving only the function of being a communication device for the love of God, cease in perceiving it as your own, and give up the apparent right to make decisions for yourself in regard to the body. We have suggested to you before that you cease using the term my or mine whenever you refer to the body. Merely refer to it as the body, as a carpenter would pick up a tool and say the hammer, the saw, or an artist would say the brush. For the wise carpenter does not identify himself with the hammer or saw, and the wise artist does not feel neglected when the brush is laying in the tray. Wisdom, then, looks upon form as merely temporary communication devices. The delight is to extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. The source of all illusion. Illusions can seem to take many forms, yet they are all one source, a decision to perceive oneself as separate from God. The best way to do that is to convince yourself that because you are separate from God, there must be many things about you in your life that are out of alignment with the will of God. Therefore, you will manifest many variations that seem to express the instability that is the effect of that one belief, one perception. I am separate from God. I have accomplished the impossible. Let me keep it in place. Illusion, then, while the form of them may seem to be many, are really one. Healing occurs when, in the depth of the mind, the decision is made to surrender, and to give up the insane idea that oneself could possibly exist apart from the mind of God. Surrender means to settle into the position of the servant, the conduit through which the mind of God, the love of God, can be expressed. The mind that exists in perfect surrender sees absolutely no purpose to any moment of experience save this. The mind in perfect surrender looks out upon a world that has been healed from its own misperception that the world has had power over it. It sees that at no time has it experienced anything but its own outpicturing. That is why all events are neutral. It is mind that interprets an event, draws a conclusion, and then bases behavior upon it. The mind that is healed and rests in surrender looks out upon an innocent world that has been touched by its blessing of forgiveness. That forgiveness is simply a step in which that mind recognizes that the world it had thought was there was nothing more than its own mental creation, and smiles and laughs and sees that the world has held no power, and that all the events that have arisen, all interpretation of events, have been generated from within the kingdom of the mind, the one place that is given unto you to assume responsibility for as your domain. The mind that has been healed of illusion has been healed of all illusions, and while time and space seem to last, the last outpicturing of a teeny mad idea called the physical body can be given over to something else, can be transformed into a simple communication device that no longer communicates separation and judgment, but rather forgiveness and innocence. It becomes nothing. It is picked up and used only in those ways it can speak, gesture, move, act, and make something in the world that touches the world with the blessing of the good, the holy, and the beautiful. Because this is simply the truth, it must mean that where you perceive justification for anything less than peace, it must mean that you have already decided, in the deeper part of your mind, to maintain this root or core misperception. That is, you are still attempting to perceive yourself as having accomplished the impossible, to have separated yourself from the mind of God. The mind that is surrendered looks out upon all things and quietly says within itself, "There has only been God. I am created of that. The source of my being, the source of my reality, rests in surrender into that and that alone." The mind that is surrendered, yet walks in your world as long as the body lasts, is often completely unrecognized by others around it, for others see a body, and therefore assume there is an individual, an ego, a separated being within it as that body. When the mind is surrendered, you could say the body walks as an empty shell and is merely waiting to be informed by the love of God. When the love of God does not inform you or ask you to move and take action, then simply rest and do nothing. That is why the final state of awakening is incomprehensible in the language of your world, since your languages are based on the very thought of separation itself. This is why when we speak of peace, we speak of that peace which is beyond all understanding. For the peace that you can understand in the language of your world is conditional peace, the kind you create when two warring nation leaders sit down in suits and ties and forget the death count in the destroyed villages, and they sign some document with a pen. They put on a front and smile for the pictures, and then they assume and teach everyone else to assume that now there is peace. Then each goes back and secretly continues to build weapons of defense against the attack sure to come from the one still perceived as an enemy. Peace cannot be bargained for. It is not the result of compromise. Peace comes only when any mind surrenders unconditionally the dream of the dreamer itself, so that there is only God and God's creation. We have shared with you before that that creation is one, the Christ mind, and that mind is not in the body. It is not a particular form and certainly does not belong to any personal entity. I was never the Christ, as though you are not. Like you, I was a temporary modification of eternal energy, of outpicturing of a thought, a mental thought held in mind, which learned to surrender the misperception of the dreamer, and became informed only by the Christ mind. Only that mind was present, and yet it could not be touched through the body. That is why my crucifixion had no effect on me whatsoever. It merely sped up the process whereby the body was dissolved away as an idea. The world is innocent. Beloved friends, come now in your understanding to change how you use consciousness. Take pause with us to remember the truth. The world that you look upon is innocent. The cause of the world is not found in the world, but only in the thoughts held within the mind. You remain perfectly free to choose to perceive differently. You remain free at all times to see that you are not the victim of circumstance, not the victim of a relationship, a career, or being born into a certain nation. You are never the victim of anything, since nothing within an illusion holds the power to truly have any effect on you. You are the one who remains free to assume responsibility for the domain of your mind. You are the one who is free to simply say, "Father, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done." And what will does the Father have, save that you be happy by returning to the peace that forever passes all understanding? What could your Father will for you, but that you awaken from the dream that there is something in the world that can add value to you? That there is someone, some career, some location, some what have you, that can actually add substance to your being? And better than this, to become free to the perception that the lack of someone, something, some career, some location, some form of any kind could detract from your being, from your perfect power of union with God. Peace, then, comes from a decision that is put into practice over time, in which the world is released. Released from what? From your belief that it should somehow be for you the conduit whereby you gain good feelings, love, peace, wisdom, ideas, comradeship, and even brotherhood or sisterhood. Detachment does not mean avoidance, but it does mean disidentification with a mistaken idea. All suffering stems from this, identification of the deep mind or soul with the forms it passes out picturing in this illusion. The belief that loss is possible, and also that gain is possible. There can only be the recognition of what is true through the practice of extending the good, the holy, and the beautiful. The end of illusion is very near when the mind reaches this following point. When any mind looks out upon its creation that is attempted to make of itself and finds all of it lacking, that something is missing, and when that mind simply decides to withdraw the value it has placed on the world, and rest into the simple desire to be with God, then heaven is but a step away, and that final step is taken by your Creator for you. The dream of separation has been your responsibility. When you reach that point of collapsing or surrendering, you enter into the stage of restoration or salvation, and that is the hands of your Creator. When restoration has been completed, and the mind no longer seeks to journey out into the fields of illusion, but simply rests empty, at one with God, then creation can begin anew. And co-creation is in the hands of both you and your Creator. The only difference is that you are no longer a separate being, like a gnat shouting at the universe, demanding that things be done your way, but rather you are empty. You are the paradox of all paradoxes, for you are all filled and only Christ abides. Yet not you lives, but only that one. Even the arising and passing away of the body are of no concern for you. You merely rise in the morning and simply say, "Father, how would you have me be present this day?" And something else informs your steps and your decision. You are no longer identified with the fruit of your action. You are no longer concerned with how it may look or how it may compare to someone else's action. You merely abide where you are, doing what you are doing, and offering it freely because you are no longer attached to it. Peace is the essence of the message that we would share with you in this lesson as a temporary resting period from the work that we have been doing in the way of transformation. Rest assured there is much more to be done, for when the mind is surrendered, resistance dies to the very extension of creation, and that mind no longer seeks to leave any dimensions whatsoever. For where would it go? It merely becomes one willing to enact whatever is being extended to it from the mind of God as a way of being involved with the extension of love. That requires, then, learning how to use consciousness differently, but it is all predicated on a return to peace. That is why, above all things, your responsibility is to enter into surrender, to let the teeny mad idea of a separate self be dissolved entirely from the mind, so that there is only the mind of Christ. Questions to ponder. Beloved friends, pause then in this moment. Observe the place that you are. In truth, is there anything around you in your current environment that could add anything to your substance? If you could find a way to possess it or digest it, would it puff you up? It might add a few pounds if you happen to have ice cream in front of you, but that is only to the body. Likewise, as you look upon your environment, imagine if the things around you were taken away. Would that take anything from you? If you can feel the simple truth of the questions that we are asking, then surely you can come to sense that just beneath your involvement in the world of form, peace is already available because love waits on your welcome. Will the world of form seek to pull you into identification with it? Oh yes, because that is part of the very outpicturing you once created. You held the thought in your mind. Would that I could create a world that will pull at me so much that it will distract me from the one thing I need to do. And when it does, I can say that I be awake now except of all the things and all these other people that need my attention more than God. If only they would go away, I could know God. If I could just disappear into a cave somewhere or a cell in a monastery and shut out the world, then I could know God. That approach never works. Recognition is not dependent on any specific state of body or lower mind. It is not necessary to spend endless hours in meditation seeking to quiet the mind. It is only necessary to withdraw value from what arises in the field of the lower mind, so that quite naturally what arises, what is recognized, is the perfect value that is held in your prior union with God. This is why awakening, salvation, or enlightenment is not a change at all, merely a recognition of what has always been, and what will always be eternally. You are free to choose anew. Now in this moment, are you free to choose anew? Now are you free to rescind your judgment of the world? Now in this very moment of eternity, you can choose to recognize that you are already perfectly awake, freely choosing what outpicturing you will pour forth from the mind, freely choosing whether to think for yourself or to think with God, whether to believe your outpicturing or to see them as temporary clouds passing through an infinite sky that the clouds have never affected or influenced. You are free now to simply say within yourself, I can choose peace instead of this. I am surrendered, and nothing matters save the extension of the good, the holy, and the beautiful. Therefore, Father, in this moment, what is your will for me? You are empty of self, empty of striving, empty of the need to be right, the need to judge, or the need to perceive anything in any certain way at all, and freed from attachment to the fruit of your action. Yet paradoxically, you are allowing creativity to flow through you, trusting that there is already a greater mind that knows how best to serve the atonement. The atonement is the uplifting of the whole of the sonship, every brother and every sister who are but aspects of the mind of God, not your mind. For your mind is an aspect of the mind of God, points of light, seemingly fragmented from the one mind, the one light. You are free to see, and please listen carefully, right where you are, that the separation never occurred. All attempts to keep it in place have been like battling for the rights of a chimera to exist, like insisting that the illusion of an oasis seen in a desert is truly real. Instead of going to the location and finding out what is real and what is false, standing there bickering with your arms folded across your chest, arguing for the right to be right, while reality slips through your fingers. All the while you are standing next to a beautiful spring which bubbles forth with the purest of water. You are free now to entertain one idea totally insane to the world. I am awake now. My dream has not occurred. No separation has occurred. No distance has been traveled. Grace has already restored me, and I am free to perceive the real world. We would ask of you this, to spend some time doing what we just suggested, to sit quietly and ask the questions that were asked just 2 pages ago about adding and subtracting from you or to you. Sit with the words just given over and over again, without being in a hurry, without struggling, and see if you can touch the place that knows the truth of these words, so that the truth is felt to be your own. Then and only then will you finally begin to dissolve the power that you have given to the ego. What is the ego but the bundle of sensation and perception and outpicturing that are the very attempt to do the impossible, to be separate from God? Would you be willing to surrender that value, to rescind it, to bring it back to your heart and soul, and then offer it to your Creator? Here then is the point of the conversion, the turning about in the seat of the soul that must be reached by anyone who, in truth, would seek God, to realize that they live, yet not themselves, but that one who extends power and life has brought them into being, and they have a function to fulfill. It is their function and no one else's. It cannot be compared. It can only be allowed. Therefore, spend some time, as much as you want for the next few days, sitting with the truth. Those of you who feel that you are going to be too busy, then let your time be used in busyness, and thereby continue to try to convince yourself that the world is real. Wait for a few days, perhaps until you come to your weekend. Then when your boss tells you that you have time off, then sit with the truth. For as this truth settles in the soul, all that we have been doing prior to this will become easier and make much more sense. It will clear the space for what is to come. For when the mind has truly awakened from illusion, there is nothing left but to be servant of the atonement, and the only question left is, Father, how this day might I serve? We will bring this message to a close, as there is no need at this point for a continuation of the words. There is only the need for direct experience held within the aloneness of your own mind and being. For revelation is intensely personal. It cannot be communicated to anyone at any time. Yet the revelation that comes to each mind may come in a unique way, but the revelation is one of truth. That is why when any two beings who are awake happen to meet each other, there is little to do but smile, and allow the phenomena of life to continue. Therefore, know that we love you greatly, and we honor you for the courage it takes to let go of the world and open the palms of your heart to the grace of heaven. As we continue in the way of transformation, let it be done from the perspective of delightful innocence, in the mind that recognizes there is nothing else to do with time except extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. Peace then be unto you always. Go in peace this day. Amen.